Every day, I dive into another story from Hollywood's golden age, those unforgettable moments that shape the stars we'll never forget. Demi Moore's story, though, stands apart. It isn't one of those glamorous tales that quietly fade away. It's the kind that lingers for years, then comes crashing back stronger than ever. Now 62, Demi is finally opening up with a level of raw honesty she couldn't reach in her 20s, 30s, or even 40s. And what she's revealing about her marriage to Ashton Kutcher has everyone rethinking everything they thought they knew. For nearly 2 decades, Demi carried the weight of silence, hiding her pain, masking her truth, and protecting a story she wasn't ready to tell. But that's over now. She's speaking her truth, and her confession is shaking Hollywood's memory of that perfect couple to its core. Back then, the world saw nothing but fairy tale perfection, the older movie legend and the rising TV heartthrob. When Demi met Ashton in May 2003, she was 40 and still healing from the emotional storm of her divorce from Bruce Willis. Ashton, just 25, walked into her life with this bright, charming energy that made her believe in love again. He was attentive, funny, and seemed to see her in ways no one else had. Their first deep conversation lasted for 8 straight hours. No cameras, no posing, just raw connection. For Demi, it felt like the universe finally gave her someone who accepted every part of her, even the pieces she thought were too broken to love. She believed she'd finally found something real, something different. But as time would soon show, not everything behind that glowing Hollywood romance was as flawless as it looked. The cracks were there, just waiting to be exposed. Within just a few weeks of dating, Ashton had already met Demi's daughters, and even Bruce Willis, something that rarely goes smoothly in Hollywood. It was like they had cracked the impossible code for modern love. By the time they officially tied the knot on September 24th, 2005, the media had already crowned them the ultimate fairy tale couple. They blended families, built a production company together, and couldn't stop gushing about each other in public. To everyone watching, they were proof that love could really conquer all. But behind that flawless image, a heartbreak was already hiding in the shadows. 2 years before their wedding, Demi went through a devastating loss. She suffered a miscarriage when she was 6 months pregnant. They had already picked a name, Chaplain Ray. Losing that baby shattered both of them in ways they didn't know how to process. Demi carried that pain like a quiet storm, blaming herself deeply. After nearly 20 years of staying sober, Demi later revealed that early in her pregnancy, she'd had moments where she smoked and drank, and she never stopped wondering if her choices had somehow caused the tragedy. That guilt built a wall between her and Ashton that no amount of love could break down. Even while they tried IVF and explored adoption, there was always this quiet ache lingering in the background. Ashton said the loss made him realize he was ready to be a father, but Demi felt herself slipping into a dark emotional place she didn't know how to escape. That loss became the first crack in their fairy tale, a wound that never really healed, and heartbreakingly, it wouldn't be the last. Demi would go on to carry even heavier secrets, paying prices no one should have to pay just to hold on to love. After the miscarriage, she was fragile, shaken, and trying desperately to find her footing again. Instead of healing, she started to drift back into the same dangerous patterns she had fought for years to escape. Nearly 2 decades of sobriety vanished when she relapsed, first with a single drink to quiet the pain, then slowly into alcohol, prescription pills, and overwhelming self-blame that dimmed her spirit. At first, Ashton tried to help, tried to comfort her, but with time, his patience faded. He began to pull away, emotionally, physically, and Demi could feel it. She blamed herself even more, convinced she was the problem, that she wasn't enough, that she was the one breaking everything apart. The distance between them grew wider every day, invisible but unmistakable. That's when the unraveling began, and what followed revealed fractures far deeper than anyone imagined. The man who once felt like her safe place suddenly felt like a stranger. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't reach him. Desperate to save what was left, Demi started making choices that chipped away at her own sense of self. In her 2019 memoir, Inside Out, she revealed one of her most painful confessions. Ashton had asked for threesomes, and she agreed, hoping it might keep him close. But instead, every time she said yes, she felt herself disappearing a little more. Each compromise was another cut to her confidence, Another layer of heartbreak added to the one she was already carrying. And just like that, the fairy tale everyone admired was beginning to crumble. Not in public, not yet, but behind closed doors, where silence screamed the loudest. It was like pieces of Demi's confidence were breaking off one by one, each compromise taking another part of her spirit. What she thought might fix the growing distance only made her feel emptier, more lost, more confused about who she was and what she truly deserved. Later, she admitted that those choices left her feeling deeply ashamed and questioning her own worth. Meanwhile, Ashton began leaning further into this idea that their relationship needed to be open-minded and modern, while Demi felt like she was fading, bending over backward to please him, losing more and more of the woman she used to be. The more she slipped into addiction to numb the pain, the more he pulled away. It became a heartbreaking cycle. The more she reached for him, the further he drifted. Behind closed doors, the tension grew thick, silent, cold, and heavy. Ashton started traveling more, staying out late, acting distant, like the vows they once made had lost their meaning. Demi could feel it. The long nights, the vague excuses, the new tone in his voice. Every moment screamed a truth she wasn't ready to face. Even her daughters noticed the shift, watching their once strong mother quietly crumble under the weight of heartbreak and guilt. Their home, which once felt warm and full of laughter, turned into a space filled with unease, hushed voices, uncomfortable glances, and the constant tension of what wasn't being said. But the worst was still waiting for her. And when it came, it shattered whatever strength she had left. By 2011, 6 years into their marriage, Demi was just holding on by a thread. She smiled for cameras, put on her brave face, and tried to convince the world that everything was still picture perfect. But on September 24th, 2011, the day that should have marked their 6th wedding anniversary, her reality collapsed. Instead of celebration, she woke up to a nightmare. A notification flashed across her phone, a report claiming Ashton had spent the night with a 22-year-old woman named Sarah Leal. The shock hit like a lightning bolt. And what made it worse? Demi had seen that same young woman before, bold enough to hand Ashton her number at a bowling alley, right in front of Demi and her daughter. That moment now replayed in her mind like a cruel movie scene she couldn't turn off. This wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. And when Ashton finally admitted what had happened, there was no denying it. He had crossed the line, but what crushed Demi the most wasn't just the act itself, it was the excuse that followed. Ashton claimed the boundary between right and wrong had become blurred because of the threesomes Demi had agreed to. To hear that, after everything she'd done to keep their marriage alive, was devastating. She had bent, compromised, and lost parts of herself trying to protect what they had, only to be blamed for his mistake. That single excuse made all her sacrifices feel meaningless, leaving her standing in the wreckage of a love story that had once looked untouchable. And that was the moment everything truly fell apart. For Demi, Ashton's words cut deeper than the betrayal itself. It felt like he turned all of her sacrifices, everything she'd done to hold their marriage together, into reasons to blame her. That kind of emotional twist left a scar no apology could heal, and the pain didn't stop there. She later learned there had been another affair, this time involving a 21-year-old woman named Brittany Jones. By then, Ashton had already started slipping away, long before Demi realized the distance between them was permanent. Just days after the story went public, Demi was forced to stand beside him at an anti-trafficking charity event, smiling for the cameras while her entire world was falling apart behind the scenes. The public didn't see the trembling hands she hid backstage, the panic she kept swallowing, or the way she could barely breathe while pretending everything was fine. On November 17th, 2011, Demi finally announced their separation. She said she needed to stay true to her values, simple words on the surface, but underneath them was the strength of a woman who had finally reached her breaking point. Yet the end of their marriage didn't bring peace, it brought chaos. What came next was one of the darkest chapters of her life, a moment that almost broke her completely. The emotional fallout hit hard. Demi had already been struggling in the final years of the marriage, but the public scandal and heartbreak sent her into a complete spiral. On January 23rd, 2012, that spiral reached a terrifying peak. During a small gathering at her Benedict Canyon home, Demi suffered a sudden health crisis, a seizure triggered by a dangerous mix of synthetic substances, exhaustion, and extreme dieting. Guests watched in shock as paramedics rushed to help. The emergency call that night marked the start of her rock bottom. In the months that followed, her addiction tightened its grip even more. Demi began taking heavy doses of pain medication daily, mixing them with alcohol and energy drinks. She became obsessed with her body image, staring into mirrors for hours, convinced she needed to shrink herself, to take up less space, to disappear quietly from the world's gaze. Her weight dropped to around 102 pounds, and the combination of stress, malnutrition, and exhaustion led to more seizures and frightening health scares. She vanished almost completely from public life. No red carpets, no interviews, no public appearances. It was like the once unstoppable star had gone silent overnight. But the damage didn't stop with her. Her collapse rippled through her family, straining the relationships she valued most. Her daughters, now young women, watched in confusion and heartbreak as their mother faded before their eyes. The strong, radiant woman they grew up with had become a shadow of herself, lost in pain and isolation. What had once been a picture-perfect Hollywood love story had turned into a devastating cautionary tale, a story of love, loss, and a woman fighting desperately to find herself again in the wreckage. Rumors began swirling, but the truth came straight from her daughters, Scout and Tallulah, who later described those years as absolutely terrifying. They said it felt like their mom had vanished and been replaced by someone else entirely. Her voice sounded different, her movements seemed off, and she often acted distant, like she wasn't really there anymore. Tallulah said it didn't even feel like her mom, not out of cruelty, but because addiction had changed her into someone unrecognizable. The pain and chaos were too much to handle, and eventually, for their own emotional safety, the girls stepped back. In 2012, they made the painful decision to cut off contact. None of them attended Demi's 50th birthday, and she missed out on so many moments, milestones, celebrations, simple memories that once glued them together as a family. The silence stretched on for almost 3 years, a gap filled with regret and heartbreak on both sides. That same year, Demi checked into Cirque Lodge in Utah, one of the most private and expensive rehab centers in the country. It was a desperate attempt to get her life back under control. But even then, recovery wasn't instant. Healing took time. And it wasn't just about breaking free from addiction, but facing the emotional wreckage she had been carrying for decades. Real change didn't start until 2015, when Tallulah, freshly out of rehab herself, reached out to her mom for the first time in years. That moment cracked something open between them. For Demi, it was the start of something new. Not just reconnecting with her daughters, but facing the truth she had spent so long running from. And one of those truths, something she had buried for years to protect Ashton, was about to come to light and completely change how people saw their marriage. It was the secret she never wanted to speak out loud, the one she tried to drown in silence, loyalty, and pain. As Demi slowly rebuilt her life after 2015, she finally began telling her story, honestly. Through therapy, rehab, and family counseling, she started to unpack the memories she had locked away. And when she eventually released her 2019 memoir, Inside Out, the truth that had been haunting her for more than a decade finally surfaced. It wasn't just about the cheating or the threesomes or even the excuses. It was deeper, emotional manipulation that quietly chipped away at her confidence. Demi revealed that during those years, she was made to feel like she wasn't enough. Not young enough, not bold enough, not modern enough to keep his interest. She shared that Ashton often joked about their age difference in ways that didn't feel playful. He told her that monogamy wasn't realistic, and those comments began reshaping her boundaries. Piece by piece, she gave up parts of herself. Not because she wanted to, but because she was terrified of losing him. She went along with things she would have never accepted earlier in her life, all in the hope of saving something that was already slipping away. That emotional erosion became the real secret of their marriage, the slow fading of her own identity. She never told anyone how deeply she was compromising her own sense of self until much later. By the time she realized how far she had fallen, the woman staring back at her in the mirror barely felt like her anymore. The miscarriage that broke her heart years earlier still haunted her, and she admitted Ashton never truly understood what that loss did to her soul. That distance, emotional and spiritual, became the invisible wound that defined their story. It was never just about fame or betrayal. It was about a woman losing herself in love and slowly fighting her way back to find who she really was again. Demi kept believing that the tragedy was her fault, a burden she carried quietly while Ashton went on traveling, working, and living his life like nothing had crumbled around her. Even after their split, she stayed silent. She didn't talk about the betrayal, the pressure, or the pain. She just kept protecting him, protecting his image, protecting the years they shared, even though it was slowly draining her soul. It took decades for her to finally break that silence. Only when she reached her late 50s, and then again at 62, did she let herself speak the truth she had buried so deep. But when she did, it wasn't to drag anyone down or get revenge. It was to reclaim herself, the version of her she had lost, while trying to keep the peace. Her story wasn't about anger. It was about release, about finally choosing honesty over silence and healing over shame. And after all that, something unexpected happened. Peace. Real, grounding peace. By the time Demi stepped into her early 60s, her entire life had transformed. Not just her career or relationships, but the way she saw herself. After decades of swallowing her emotions and hiding her pain, she finally realized that speaking her truth wasn't about exposing Ashton Kutcher. It was about freeing the woman she used to be. Surprisingly, healing didn't show up through bitterness. It came through clarity and understanding. In 2020, Ashton publicly said there was no bad blood between them and that he still had love and respect for Demi's daughters, a rare, calm moment after years of chaos. He later admitted that the end of their marriage made him feel like he had failed, especially after the heartbreaking miscarriage they had gone through together. His words didn't erase what happened, but they showed something real. Both of them had been deeply shaped by that relationship. Both walked away, scarred, but also wiser. Then, in 2022, something nobody expected happened. Demi teamed up with Mila Kunis, Ashton's wife, for a Super Bowl commercial. Instead of tension or resentment, the whole moment was filled with humor and surprising ease. The two women laughed together, poked fun at their shared past, and proved that moving forward doesn't have to be messy or mean. It was a moment of growth that caught everyone off guard, not with drama, but with grace. Behind the scenes, Demi and Mila even formed an unexpected friendship. They started a book club together and showed that healing doesn't always look the way people imagine. It can be soft, mature, and full of light, the kind that comes after years of darkness. By 2025, Demi finally opened up completely about the emotional reality of her relationship with Ashton. Not just the betrayals or public scandals, but the deeper pain of losing herself in love. She talked about how easy it was to disappear when you spend years trying to be everything for someone else, and how powerful it feels to finally come back to yourself. Now, after decades of heartbreak, silence, and recovery, Demi Moore stands as proof that you can lose everything, fall apart completely, and still rebuild from the ground up, stronger, freer, and finally at peace. Demi Moore laid it all out with the kind of honesty that only comes after years of silence, explaining how, piece by piece, she had given away her boundaries, her confidence, and even her sense of self just to keep a man who was never meant to complete her. Every time she said yes when her heart screamed no, every time she made herself smaller to keep the peace, she lost a little more of the woman she used to be. And that, she revealed, was the real secret she had carried for all those years. The heartbreak wasn't just about a failed marriage. It was about how completely she had abandoned herself, trying to hold it together. But this time, Demi spoke from a place of power, not pain. There was no trembling voice, no hesitation, no lingering shame. She owned every part of her story, both the mistakes and the lessons. For the first time in decades, she wasn't the woman defined by anyone else's actions or reputation. She was simply, and finally, herself again. In the years after her collapse, Demi rebuilt her entire life from the ground up. She faced her past head-on, no longer pretending that fame, beauty, or love could fix what had been broken inside. She began the hard work of rebuilding her bond with her daughters, the same girls who once said they didn't recognize her. The process wasn't easy. There were tears, confrontations, apologies, and long silences that had to be broken carefully. But step by step, they found their way back to each other. Scout, Rumor, and Tallulah became not just her daughters again, but her friends, her teachers, her anchors. Through that healing, Demi realized something she had never truly understood before, that real love doesn't require you to shrink, twist, or prove yourself. Real love holds space for your wholeness. And with that realization, she started living differently. Demi embraced what she called solo partnering, a term that might sound new, but for her, it meant everything. It was about being her own partner in life, her own protector, her own source of fulfillment. She stopped waiting for anyone to fill the empty spaces in her heart and began filling them herself with peace, purpose, and genuine self-respect. At 62, Demi Moore wasn't the same woman who once stood trembling beside Ashton Kutcher, trying to hold her world together. She had transformed into someone who didn't just survive, she thrived. And the most powerful part of it all? She didn't reveal Ashton's darkest moments to destroy him. She revealed her own truth to free herself. When she spoke about their relationship publicly, it wasn't an expose. It was a revelation. She admitted that silence had cost her far more than heartbreak ever could. It had cost her years of her life, parts of her identity, and the ability to fully see herself. Finally, speaking out was the last act of courage she needed to reclaim that stolen power. Her journey became a mirror for millions of people who had lost themselves in love, a reminder that even the strongest, most capable souls can disappear when they start prioritizing someone else's happiness over their own. But her comeback showed something even more important, that it's never too late to find yourself again. Through therapy, reflection, and forgiveness, Demi found clarity. She understood that healing didn't have to mean bitterness or revenge. It could look like compassion, even for the people who hurt you. When Ashton publicly expressed that there was no bad blood between them, Demi didn't respond with anger. She simply continued living her truth, showing through her actions that peace was more powerful than payback. Then came one of the most surprising chapters, the moment that truly showed how far she had come. In 2022, Demi joined forces with Mila Kunis, Ashton's wife, for a Super Bowl commercial. Nobody expected it. The two women stood side by side, laughing, joking, and turning what could have been awkward history into something light and empowering. They poked fun at their shared past and flipped the narrative, proving that women can choose grace over grudges. Behind the scenes, that collaboration grew into an unexpected friendship. Demi and Mila even started a book club together, bonding over stories of strength, resilience, and self-worth. For fans who had watched Demi's long, painful journey unfold, it was a full-circle moment, a living example of growth, maturity, and peace. By 2025, Demi finally opened up completely about everything. Not just the betrayals or the headlines, but the emotional erasure she had lived through for years. She talked about how easy it is to disappear when you spend too long trying to be someone else's definition of enough. And in sharing that, she gave countless others permission to reclaim their voices too. Demi's story isn't about scandal anymore. It's about survival. It's about rebuilding when the world expects you to break, and loving yourself when you once thought you were unlovable. Her rise from heartbreak to healing stands as proof that no matter how deep the fall, there's always a way back to yourself. So what do you think was the most heartbreaking part of Demi's journey? Was it the loss, the silence, or the moment she finally let it all go? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. And if you felt something real while listening to her story, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful Hollywood stories. See you in the next one.